Well, it's safe to say that the Cleveland Browns draft went exactly as we all expected. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, then please do me a favour and hit that subscribe button. The NFL draft is officially over, so let's jump straight into it. Let's talk about the Browns draft picks, give them some grades. The Browns entered the draft with 10 picks. They ended up only making 7, all within the first 5 rounds. I'll be honest, I like this draft for the Browns, not to spoil the rest of the video, but I don't really have that many things to criticise with this draft. Of course, no draft is perfect, pardon me, but I think in terms of where the Browns, ended up making their picks, they not only got good players in positions of need, but also got pretty good value as well. The way that I base these rankings for me is the players' talent, where they were drafted relative to where they were, supposed to be drafted, the fit, the need, as well as just, my overall feeling on the pick and on the player. So starting off with the Browns' first round pick, Mason Graham, round 1, pick 5. Starting with Mason, would I have liked to have taken Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter instead? Sure. I had both of those guys as my top 2 players in this draft with a gap between the next group of guys. However, you moved back to 5 and still got a consensus top 5 prospect in this draft. We didn't talk that much about Mason Graham on here towards the end of the draft process because it just didn't feel like a realistic option at that point for the Browns where they were picking. But he was my 3rd favourite prospect in this draft. And if you think I am lying, I did tweet this the day after the Browns season ended, and it was confirmed that they had the number 2 pick. He's an all-round defensive lineman who is great against the run and offers plus-level pass rush upside. I doubt he's going to, be one of these guys that consistently gets 10-plus sacks a year, not on this defensive line with the guys that we have. But he creates chaos and consistently collapses the pocket through the interior. When that happens, the quarterback has nowhere else to go but to the edge where, the Browns will have Myles Garrett waiting for them. That alone brings so much value to this defensive line, let alone the fact that he is an every down defensive tackle who will also be incredibly stout against the run. But Mason Graham isn't just a run-stopping defensive tackle like some people have been saying. He's a fantastic football player. So whilst, of course, I'm disappointed that we won't get to watch Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter play for the Browns after, talking about them both for months, to move back to 5. Sorry, guys, my throat is terrible right now. But to move back to 5, still grab my 3rd favourite prospect and pick up an extra 2nd round pick in this draft and a future first next year that could potentially become a top 10 pick. That is pretty good business. Travis Hunter would have been awesome in Cleveland, but Mason Graham, Quinshon Judkins, and another 1st round pick next year improves your team more than just Hunter alone does, in my opinion. So whilst factoring in the trade along with the talent and value with Mason Graham at 5, I think you have to give this pick an A, man. I really do. As I said, you're getting a legitimate top 5 talent who will be a day 1 impact player with the 5th pick, whilst also picking up the picks that they did to move back as well. It is a really good move. The only reason it's not an A+ is because Travis Hunter is a true blue chip prospect, and of course they did pass up on him. Moving on to the next pick, Carson Schwessinger, 2nd round, pick 33, 1st pick in the 2nd round. This is of course the pick that shocked a lot of people. I, for one, did not have the Browns taking a linebacker here. I don't think anybody did. Because of that, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm an expert when it comes to Carson Schwessinger. But from what I have seen of him, from what people that I trust that have scouted him say, He is a really good football player. He's got great size and athleticism at the linebacker position. He can fly around all over the field. He's good in coverage. He's good against the run. And he's also a really good blitzer as well. He had over 130 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 4 sacks and 2 interceptions last year in his first season as a full-time starter. He was a former 0-star recruit who was a walk-on and ended up becoming UCLA's team captain. So, he clearly is willing to put the work in, that is for sure. The pick, of course, raises questions about JOK's future. If it is a JOK replacement, then you see why they picked him, given the similar abilities. But if JOK comes back and they picked him to play next to him, then the Browns all of a sudden have a very, very good linebacker room. Regardless, whilst I didn't expect the Browns to target linebacker this early, they certainly felt the need was there. Most draft experts agreed that, the drop-off at the position after Schlesinger was pretty big. So getting him at 33, despite being the consensus 44th player, is reasonable value. Factor that in with the player, and I'd probably give this pick a B-. But I wouldn't be surprised if Carson makes this pick look even better than that down the line. Moving on to Quinshon Judkins, again, second round, pick 36. There was a lot of talk about whether, the Browns would have traded one of these picks. They ended up making both selections. I said all offseason, the Browns need a new starting running back, and they got their new starting running back. This was a really good running back class. There were 5 guys in this draft that I felt were day one starters in Ashton Jinchie, Omarion Hampton, Caleb Johnson, Trevion Henderson, and Quinshon Judkins, and then a whole bunch of, potential starters, complementary backs as well. I felt like the Browns had to walk away with one of those 5 guys, and they did. So, I think this is a good pick. I think Q was the 50th ranked player by consensus, but with the Browns not picking again until 67 after this pick, they risked missing out on all of those guys if they didn't take one here. So, perfectly happy with this pick. Judkins is a powerful downhill runner at 6 foot, 220 pounds, with good vision, patience, agility. His biggest criticism is, his top end speed. However, he tested really, really well at the combine, running a 4.48 and a 1.51 10-yard split, which are great numbers for a running back his size. He has room for improvement in pass protection, but he's got the skill set to be effective out of the backfield, which truly does make him an every down back. He has, of course, experience playing in a dual back role at Ohio State, something the Browns have run with Chubb and Hunt in the past, might look to do again, obviously, with how else they targeted this draft with another running back. But you also have no concerns with him taking 20 carries a game as a bell cow, which is why I think the Browns targeted him over a Trevion Henderson or a Caleb Johnson, because as good as I think those guys are, there are some concerns about whether they could handle that type of workload. You don't have any of those concerns with Quinshon. The Browns needed a starting running back. They got one with this pick. So for that, I've got to give it a B. The only reason I think it's not an A is just because of how good this running back class was and, the value you could have got elsewhere. But I am really, really happy with this pick and with the pick being Quinshon. Next up, probably, one of mine and probably most people's favourite picks for the Browns. Tight end Harold Fannin Jr., round 3, pick 67. One of my favourite picks in this draft. Is there some Ohio bias there? For sure. But Harold Fannin was my favourite tight end prospect for the Browns, and they got him. He's not the biggest, he's not the strongest, he's not the fastest, but he's a really, really good football player. I've said since the beginning of this process that I am convinced he will translate to the NFL. He's just too talented not to. You don't put up the most receiving yards in college football, not just at tight end, but in college football, as a 20-year-old tight end if you're not talented. Yes, he played in the MAC, but, if it was so easy, then why haven't we seen other guys do what he did at Bowling Green? And, even when he played Power 5 competition, he still dominated. He was still one of the best players on the field. Against Penn State and Texas A&M, two of the best defenses in college football last year, he had 137 yards and 145 yards respectively, to go along with a touchdown as well in both of those games. If you have any doubts, then go watch the tape from those two games. The kid is an NFL player. I am sure of it. He's a yak machine, had the most yak yards of any player in college football last year as well. He forced the most missed tackles. He had the best PFF receiving grade of any tight end in college football last year. And again, just to stress it, he is still only 20 years old. He was ranked around the 75th player in the draft, and the Browns got him at 67, so pretty good value. But to be honest, that doesn't even matter with this pick. If the Browns walked away with Fanning at 67 or 94 in this draft, I was going to be ecstatic, and they did just that. This is an A pick for me, no question about it. We really manifested Harold Fanning to the Browns. I'm so happy about it. Then going on to Dylan Gabriel, round 3, pick 94. The most questionable pick for sure. I'll admit this one threw me off at first. At this point in the draft, I thought that if the Browns were going to take a quarterback, then it probably would have been a bit later on. I mean, Gabriel would have been one of the guys in play, if that is what they were going to do. But they instead took him at the end of the 3rd round. So I was certainly puzzled by this one. It's not a top pick, but it is a pick in the top 100. So they clearly felt good enough about him to invest this pick on him. I didn't love it, not because I thought the Browns should have taken other guys ahead of him, like the reason most people don't like it, but because I just didn't really like taking him at 94 when they still had players in positions of need on the board, such as wide receiver and safety. But at the end of the day, if you are taking a punt on a mid to late round quarterback, to be honest, I don't really give a fuck who it is. At this point, you're just throwing darts at it. So whoever the Browns felt is their best guy, then that's their guy. I just felt they could have used this pick elsewhere. However, I do think we are doing Gabriel a disservice by, not highlighting anything he does well and just talking about, how we didn't understand this pick. Yes, he's short, but he's made it work and, led programs to 5 good seasons during his 6 years in college. He does actually have a decent arm and he does move quite well. Of all the mid to late round quarterbacks coming into this draft, you probably could have argued that he had the best chance of being a good backup or fringe starter. He certainly fits the mold of those type of guys, like a Brock Purdy or Bo Mix, that have come out of college with a ton of experience and done well in the NFL. The Browns needed a quarterback. I personally didn't think there was any top-end quarterback prospects in this draft, so can't fault taking a swing. Yes, it wasn't my preference. I felt that Gabriel was more of a 4th/5th round pick. His consensus ranking was in the late 100s, so this could certainly be considered a reach. But at the end of the day, they haven't needed quarterback and invested in quarterback, so I do understand it. I'm going to give this pick a C. Certainly the most questionable of the draft, but as I said, I do understand it. Next pick, Dylan Sampson, round 4, pick 126. Look, I said all off-season the Browns needed to completely revamp their run game and invest into this running back room. Not just bring in a starter, bring in multiple guys. I said they should probably double dip at running back in this draft, and that's exactly what they did. I wasn't sure that they would invest 2 picks within the first 4 rounds, but I'm happy that they did. Sampson was the highest ranked running back on the board at this point and was the consensus 80th player in the draft. So, getting him at 126 is very good value. He wasn't my favourite running back on the board at this point, but he probably made the most sense as someone to play alongside Judkins. In a vacuum, if the Browns hadn't taken any running back, then I probably wouldn't have taken Sampson here. But given the fact that they took Judkins, it makes a lot of sense. He's a good change of pace back who, He has great burst, great contact balance, and he can definitely be a home run threat, on any given play. He certainly has the speed and athleticism to do that. Whilst he's certainly on the shorter side at 5'8", he is strong for his size and pretty effective on short yardage situations as well. He also has the skill set to contribute out of the backfield and is pretty effective after the catch. He actually led the SEC in rushing yards per game at 114, as well as rushing touchdowns with 22. And that's the SEC that everyone wants to tell you is, the toughest, hardest conference in college football. Doing all of this as well as a 20-year-old running back, that is impressive and certainly shows that he has the production to match the talent. As I said, the Browns needed to invest into the running back room, and they've done that with 2 picks in the first 4 rounds, 2 players with great athletic traits as well as a lot of college production. They'll both contribute to this offense right away. So for that reason, I give the Sampson pick a B-. If this was the only pick at running back, that grade would have been lower. But factoring in the strategy of taking both guys here, I've got to give it a B-. Looking forward to seeing what both guys can do for the Browns next year. And then, of course, moving on to the Browns' final pick of the draft, round 5, pick 144. The Browns come up from, was it 167 they were at around then? They jump about 20 spots. They jump right ahead of the Philadelphia Eagles. All of us are thinking, are they trying to jump whoever the Eagles were planning? Were the Eagles planning on taking Shedeur Sanders? We'll never know because the Browns ended up taking him, double dipping at both running back and quarterback. They are the only team in the common draft era to draft 2 running backs and 2 quarterbacks within the first 5 rounds. Let me start off by saying that I absolutely love the Browns' approach to quarterback this draft. I really do. I didn't feel like there were any true top-end talent at the position, not at the number 2 pick. So I was always on board with taking swings at it elsewhere later on. This pick probably bumps the Gabriel pick as well, up to a C+, because whilst others criticised the pick after they took Sanders, as in the Gabriel pick, I actually feel the opposite. Would I have liked it to be a bit later than pick 94? Sure. But the pick makes more sense for me with the Shedeur pick because you're taking multiple swings at the most important position in sports. I've said it so many times. If you don't have a quarterback, you should take as many swings as you can. It's the most important position in sports. Yes, that doesn't mean, using the number 2 overall pick on someone that doesn't deserve it, but it means taking swings at the position. So I like the Browns' approach, of not taking a guy high, but instead taking 2 swings at it later on in the draft. If one works out, you have one of the cheapest starting quarterbacks in the league going forward and could probably recoup the draft capital that you spent on the other guy in a trade for them anyway. So, and if they don't both work out, you've wasted, 2 mid-round picks, but perhaps still have 2 first-round picks to take more swings next year. Just keep taking those swings. Nobody really knows what they're doing when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks, let's be honest. So just keep trying until you hit. Now, as for, Shedeur Sanders himself, I absolutely love this pick. He was not my choice at number 2, but I had him as a fringe first rounder with the highest, floor in this class, to be honest. He doesn't have the physical traits, but he is incredibly accurate. He can operate within the pocket really well. Yes, he can hold on to the ball too long, etc., etc. But no prospect is perfect. And what he does well, I do think will translate to the NFL. Not saying he will be a top 5 quarterback, top 10 quarterback, top 12 quarterback. But there's no reason he can't be a starter in the NFL, in my opinion. Not a ceiling that I'd like to invest the second overall pick on, but the 144th pick, you would be silly to pass up on that, even if you already drafted a quarterback like the Browns had. I don't know why he fell. Maybe it was the interviews, maybe it was something worse, only time will tell. But, DeJuan Jones fell a few years back because he said he liked basketball in his pre-draft interviews. Like, there's plenty of ridiculous reasons this stuff happens. Regardless, Shedeur was the best player on the board at this point by a mile. So why not take him? Who else are the Browns taking at 144 in the draft that should have gone over Shedeur? Absolutely nobody. So again, whilst I wasn't a fan of Shedeur at 2, I would have understood why they did it and wouldn't have minded the pick at 33. So to get him at 144 is just incredible value. If he does turn into a starting NFL quarterback, it's the best value pick of the draft by a mile. Of course, that is a big if, but that is kind of the point of why I like this move, as well as taking Gabriel as well, because every quarterback prospect is an if. So when the class is as underwhelming as this one, why take that chance on an if at a quarterback at 2 when you can take 2 shots at it later on in the draft? They basically doubled their chances of that if happening. And if it doesn't, it's a 3rd and a 5th round pick, man. It's really not the end of the world. A player that some experts mock to your team at number 2 overall, and you got him at 144. That's an A pick, regardless of what you think about the player. No doubt about it. I like this Browns draft overall, as I said. I really did. They made 7 picks, and to be honest, I can only really poke many holes in one. Would I have liked them to get a safety? Sure. A wide receiver? Sure. But they entered this draft with their 2 biggest needs, in my opinion, being quarterback and running back, and they walked away with 2 of them. They added really good football players who will all have day 1 impact, as well as taking 2 swings at quarterback. I can't complain. To be honest, this is probably one of the better drafts the Browns have had in recent years when you factor in the talent, need, fit, as well as picking up the extra 1st round pick for next year. So when factoring that, the picks as well as the trade and that extra 1st, for me, I've got to give this draft a B+. They got a top 5 prospect at 5. They address positions of need. They got day 1 impact starters across the board. They took multiple swings at quarterback, including Shedeur Sanders at 144 when he was a consensus top 30 player. And they picked up an extra 1st round next year. Of course, this is all subjective, and we will never actually know the true impact and grades for this class until a few years down the line. But as for now, just basing it off what we can, I am a big fan of this Browns draft. I'll put it like this. If I had told you before the draft that the Cleveland Browns would get Shedeur Sanders, Mason Graham, Quinshon Judkins, Harold Fanning, and a future 1st round pick, I think most of you would have signed up for that, let alone, to go along with the other selections as well. Really good draft from the Browns, in my opinion. Of course, only time will tell, but from what we can go off, I think this is a really good draft. I liked doubling up on running back. That was something that I think they should have done. And whilst, some people threw it out there half jokingly, but the idea of drafting 2 quarterbacks never feels like a realistic one. But the fact that they did, I have absolutely no qualms with it. The Browns need a quarterback. Why not take multiple shots at it? So, yeah, happy with this draft for the Browns. The Browns have also signed a bunch of undrafted free agents, but I'll be honest, I don't know much about most of those guys. But I will poke around and see if there's any value there worth talking about. But that would do it for me today, guys. Let me know your thoughts on the Browns draft in the comment section. Let me know who was your favourite pick this year. If you do enjoy my content, then please drop this video a like, hit the subscribe button. It's free, but it really, really helps out my channel. You can also check the links in the description to see where you can follow and interact with me on social media. As I always say, I'm trying to build a community of Cleveland Browns fans, and even if that means only getting to talk to 1 fan a day, I'm happy because I get to talk Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have an amazing Sunday. Have an amazing week. Enjoy all of the content from all of the Browns draft picks and all of that stuff. But most importantly, go Browns.